guys, welcome to Creations by Karen. Today I'm going to show you how to make a pride wreath. I'm going to show you step by step how to make it, so let's get going. You're going to need a few things before we start. You're going to need an 8-inch round wreath form. I got these at Dollar Tree in Canada, and they're 2 for $1. You're going to need a set of needle nose pliers, something to cut tie wraps with, a pair of scissors, and something to punch holes in foam. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is take your 8-inch wreath form, place it on a piece of mesh. This is a mesh that I got at, I believe I got this at Walmart. Just place it down, place the wreath form on top of it, and you want to trace the inside circle of this. And then you're just going to cut that out. All right, and then you're going to fix it to the inside of the wreath form, and you can use tie wraps to do that. It would take about 6 tie wraps for you to do that. So this is what it looks like cut out, just a circle. And I did want to have a placement of the petals that I'm going to be using, so I made a template. This is my template, and as you can see, it's got all the holes where I want the petals to be placed on the wreath. And I just placed this down on top of my piece of mesh, and I took a oil-based marker and I just put dots where all my holes were, and that gave me the template on the mesh for this. So then you're going to need a piece of foam. I always finish the backs of my wreaths, and so you're just going to take this piece of foam. You're just going to take your wreath form, place it on the foam, of course trace it out, cut the wreath out, or the center circle out, and then that's what I use my hole punch for. It's just to punch holes in it, and then I'll fix this at the end of the video on putting this on the back of the wreath. Okay, so let's get started making the wreath. This is what my wreath form looks like with all the tie wraps already placed. So you're going to need 8 you're going to need 8 tie wraps on each section, and there's 3 different sections. On these particular wreath forms, you only have 3 rungs, and we're going to use the center rung. So you're going to fix 8 tie wraps on the center, and then everywhere that you put a mark using your template, you're going to put a tie wrap on it as well. Okay, because we're just going to slip the petals in to make this. I'll show you how to make the petals. We're going to be using a regular sunflower, Dean Michaels sunflower petal to make this. Now I use mesh that I was able to get at Dollar Tree here in London, Ontario, Canada. It's really difficult to get good quality mesh right now, and certainly we can't get good mesh here in Canada, and so I try to find the most cost-effective way to make my wreaths, and I was able to find all of these colors at the Dollar Tree here, and it was $1.25 a roll, and of course there's 6 inches. So I've made 6-inch squares, and I actually double the mesh because this mesh is quite see-through, and then I want the colors to be quite vibrant in this wreath. So you're just going to take your petal and place it down, and you have a finished edge here and a finished edge here. You're just going to go to the middle, and you're going to scrunch it in, and it'll look like a bow tie. And then you place the bottom over the top like this. That's what it looks like. And then I like to place a elastic band on the base of these petals, so I can make all the petals at once, and they're all ready to go, that I just have to slip them into my wreath form. So let me show you again. Put it in a diamond shape with the finished edges on the right and the left, into the middle, and then place the bottom over the top, and then put a rubber band on it. Now I will tell you that I did use a wood burner to cut all this mesh. Using a wood burner in place of scissors cuts down on the amount of fray that you have when you're making your wreath. Deco mesh is notorious for fray, and I like to cut that part out of it so I don't have to go back and cut all the fray off at the end of the when I finish making the wreath. And by using a wood burner, I'm able to eliminate 99% of the fray. You still might have like a little bit, but maybe 1 or 2 strands, and you can just go through and cut those off at the end. And then just put a tie wrap on. Now, a good thing to know is when you're using a wood burner, especially if you're cutting a lot of mesh, that you protect your nose and mouth when you're using your wood burner, because that does elicit some kind of toxic smoke from it. Certainly don't have your pets around when you're doing it. So, you know, you should have something to cover your mouth and nose, just to protect yourself and your family and your pets. Okay, so there's another petal. So I've gone ahead and I've made all the petals for this particular wreath, and that saves a lot of time. And it's something that you can do if you're just watching TV or just sitting chatting with someone. And then I'm just going to go ahead and place them in. So in this particular wreath form, I'm going to put, to start, the middle rung of the outside of the wreath form. I'm just going to place my petals in, and I'm going to take 4 red, and I'm going to wait to cut all the ends of these zip ties off until I've got all the petals in place. And you pretty much, you want to just make sure that all your petals are about the same length, okay? So on this particular wreath form, I have the petal just touching the middle rung, okay? So I'm going to put 4 red. And once you've had all the petals put on, made already, and the tie wraps already in place, this is nothing to put together. And it's always, I always like to make sure that the finished edge of the petal is covering the unfinished edge of the petal that was placed previous to that. If that makes sense. So these are finished edges of petals here, and they're placed over top of the unfinished edge. Okay? That's just something I like to do. You don't have to do that. If that doesn't bother you, it does bother me. So I always want to make sure that my petals look really nice when they're laying down. Oh, my cat's come for a visit. My cat hears the zip ties and she loves to play with them. And I also have the center on the, so I've got 4 of those on the table, and it's a ball, and she'd like to play with that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put the yellow. So it's red, yellow, green, blue, purple is the way it's going to go. So again, these are all squares that I've made out of 6-inch mesh. You certainly can use 12-inch or 10-inch mesh if you like. I just happen to get a lot of mesh at my local dollar store. And, you know, I really have to double it whenever I'm making wreaths using the dollar store mesh, because, you know, it is quite see-through, and I just think it works best for me. One more orange. Yellow is next. You're going to need 4 of those. Now, it took a bit of time to figure out the placement of all these petals, because I want to have them coming in sort of in a V. And that was a bit of trial and error, and that's why I think it's really important to make a template when you're making these. And that way, if you want to make another one, you already have that template ready to go. So So it just saves a lot of time. My cat sees a glue stick. She thinks I'm not looking at her. She thinks she'd like to take that and go play with it. Lexi? No, no. There she goes. Get down. Get down. Oops. My yellows are all in now. I'll show you what this looks like once we get all the outside petals put in. Green is next. And certainly you can use whatever color pattern that you want when you're making this. This is just the one that I decided on. You can just make your wreath however you want to make it. Now I do have mesh that has a bit of foil through it. So as I'm going along, if I see some strands that are just kind of hanging out, I do clip them off. It's going to be a very colorful wreath when it's done. I was kind of wondering what kind of color center that I was going to put into it. And I decided to go with white just because it's a contrasting color and I think it'll look nice. We're going blue now. So as you can see, with having these petals already made with the rubber bands on them, it's like no time to whip this up. And those rubber bands will disintegrate in time, so you don't need to worry about taking those off. And the next row of petals are going to cover all the tie wraps and all the rubber bands that you've placed on them. You don't need to worry about that. My cat's a Maine Coon breed, so she's quite vocal if she sees something outside that she wants and obviously can't have it. So she gets a bit chatty. They're also very much water lovers. She likes to sit in my laundry tub and play a game with the washer. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the last one is going to be purple. So you have 4 of each color on your outside row, which again is the second row or second bracket in from the edge. And the last one going in. Like this. I always like to tuck that one, that unfinished edge, under the one that's next to it. Okay, now I'm going to go through and cut all these tie wraps off. It's always nice to have a little garbage handy. So like the colors on this. I was pretty excited when I saw they had the primary colors at the dollar store I went to, because usually they just have the pastel ones at Easter. So I'm just going to go and turn all my tie wrap heads to one side. If you just leave them like they are, then it doesn't allow the next set of petals that you put on to lay flat, because this, of course, is causing them to sit up a bit. Okay, so that's what my first row of petals looks like when it's on. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and put the second row in. So where I have my 4 petals of each color, right below it, that particular petal, I'm going to put 3 petals in, okay, with the same color. So I might as well start at the red. And you're just going to come down about 1.5 inches from where the other one started. Just put 3 in. And then the next one is orange. And then the next one is yellow. Took me a while to figure out how the placement of this that I wanted to go, but I finally worked it out. So the thing that takes the longest of doing these wreaths is the cutting of the mesh, because certainly you can just sit upstairs or sit in front of the TV and watch TV and fold them and put the elastic on them. That doesn't take a lot of time. The cutting of the mesh takes the most amount of time, because you have to be kind of precise about the cut. You certainly don't want to have a lot of waste. It's never good. And I know that from a roll of mesh, I can, especially these these ones. They're only 5-foot rolls, so I can get about 12 petals out of each roll, which doesn't seem like a lot, but remember I am doubling them, right? Green is next. And then blue. This is something you can have kids do with you. It's a good craft for all ages. The only thing that if you're having kids do it, that you certainly wouldn't want them to be using a wood burner. And other than that, I mean, they can use something to snug up tie wraps with, and you know, this is pretty safe as long as they're not wielding it at someone, I guess. So you have 4 on the outside, 3 on the second row, and we're going to put 2 of each on the last row. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut these off. Oops. Whoop. Hello, Lexi. Did you come to say hi? Did you take something from me? No, 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 no. Just gonna move that away from the cat. So you're going to need in total of each of these colors 9 petals for each color. See a strand here. So this is what your second row looks like. Okay? And we're going to put the last row in. I'm sitting in front of the green, and you're going to need 2 of each petal for the last row going in. Blue. And purple. I really like the way this is coming together. Such great vibrant colors. And red. And orange is next. And don't worry about these tie wraps and elastics because the center will cover these. Orange. Now as you get closer to the end of this, things are a bit snug in here. That's okay, just take your time. Place them in. They'll all fit. And the last two are yellow. Not much room left here, which is good. One more. Bit of a challenge. I'm just going to use this to pull it through. Once again, you just want to make sure that petals are all about the same size. It's the only thing you need to worry about. And just pull it snug. And then just cut all these off. What do you got? Huh? Go, and then just turn all your tie wraps so the heads are facing away. Okay, so that's what all your petals are. And I really like the fact that they're sort of in a V shape. And that's just placement of the petals, all right? And that's why it's important to make a template before you just randomly start putting petals in. All right, so then we're going to put the center one on, the centerpiece on. I've decided to go with a white centerpiece just because I think it was a good contrast. So all I did was take a styrofoam ball like this and I cut it in half. I just used an X-Acto knife to do that with these. And then I painted it white. And then I put some Modge Podge on it and then put some, just some very fine white glitter on there. Waited for that to dry, and then when that was completely dry, I put another coat of Modge Podge on it just because I wanted it to seal it, okay? And then to affix it to my wreath, I just took a chenille stem, and then I took some floral wire and I made really small pieces and put them in a U and used those, stuck them in to hold the chenille stem on. And that probably would have been fine, but I like to really have my centerpiece on securely. So then I took a small piece of foam and I hot glued it onto the back of the form, and then again put some more of the floral wires on it, and that's, I'll show you up close what that looks like. Okay, so this is going to fit right into the middle of my wreath form. Okay, so all you have to do is just go through one of the pieces of mesh, and then you just pull it down. And you want it to be very snug on here. So what I like to do is like turn it over and then I snug it really tight. Now I know this is not going to come off the wreath form. And I don't want any gap. And by doing it this way, you don't have any. and I'm just going to take my clippers and clip that off. Go. Okay, so this is what it looks like with the centerpiece on it. I think that's really nice contrast. And like I said, you can't see any of the wreath form that's underneath of it. You can't see any tie wraps. And I think it looks really nice. Now you can go ahead and just hang this up. It's pretty finished on the back of it. There really isn't anything that you need to worry about. But I'm giving this to someone, so I like to finish it completely. And so what I like to do is just take a piece of chenille stem, just to make a hanger, I guess. And I'm just going to pick like one small area. Just going to twist that. And then I'm just going to wrap this around the end of the wreath form so it doesn't come off. And then I'm going to take my backing, which I've made, and then I'll just tie wrap this onto the back. And I use 4-inch tie wraps, and that's what I use for placement of my petals as well. And like you can go to Home Depot and get like 1,000 of them for I think $23, which is less than a penny a piece. Pretty good deal. I just really like to have everything really look finished. And by doing this, it looks finished. And then if you have, you know, if you're selling these, you can place your logo or your stamp on the back of it. And then everybody will know where they got it, right? That is a dud one. So it's important when you're making your wreath, you don't want to snug these tie wraps up too tight initially, just because you'd want to make sure the placement is all good. Because you can see there's a gap here, and if I snugged it up, I wouldn't have any way to pull it over. And if you pull too hard, it will pull right out of the foam back. This is just very lightweight foam, and I can get it at Michael's here. And there's another store here called Len's Mill Store, and I think it's 34 cents a piece, which is really good deal. It's not that cheap at Michael's, that's for sure. So I'm just got a couple more to do.